Hey y'all, we got one day till Christmas. Merry Christmas. We got one day till Christmas. One day till Christmas. One day till Christmas. All right, I'm getting my information pulled up, but welcome. I pray that my Wi-Fi holds up for this live. We will not be long tonight, but we got one day till Christmas. Merry Christmas. Drop a heart if you love Christmas. Um, we got one day till Christmas. Today is the 11th day of Christmas. And if you have been paying attention to anything, you know that every day I've been giving you another gem on the day of Christmas based on the Christmas carol that is popular around this time of year. And it's one day till Christmas, y'all. So Merry Christmas. But please make sure that you drop a heart on the video, TikTok, if you are joining and you love Christmas. We got one day till Christmas. So tonight, let's make sure we go ahead and recap on the 11th day of Christmas based on the famous Christmas carol. That was actually, it's a Catholic song, Catholic catechism. And so it's like each day represents a part of our faith that you're supposed to remember. And I'm not Catholic personally, but I love that it connects you back to the Bible. So every day that you're like the 12 days of Christmas should be building you up, reminding you, just like every day we should be reading the word and building up to the birth of Jesus and remembering that moment in time. It's the same thing with the song, which is why I love it. So the 11th day of Christmas represents the 11 disciples minus Judas. Did y'all know that? The 11 disciples minus Judas. Because it was 12 disciples, right? 12 apostles, if you will. And if you minus Judas, you get the 11. And so those are the significant, I guess you would say, like apostles. I don't know why they chose 11th instead of the 12, but 11 11 is what we're going with. Yesterday was 10, and 10 was for 10 commandments. Did you know that one? So every day we've been going through each one. Tomorrow I'll do a big recap of all the 12 days of Christmas before we get into our last bit of the word. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen over on YouTube. If you're not following me on YouTube, be sure to do so you can stay abreast and just go and look at any of the content that I have, because usually when I go live and all of the live videos are on YouTube, so you can see an array of all the things I've been telling people about over these years, because a lot of times, I love to grow in my faith, and I want you to grow in your faith, but I don't want you to just grow in your faith because you go to church and you sit there with the preacher and you just write notes and it's kind of like this standard traditional thing. I want you to grow in your faith because you love the word, or you want to learn to love the word because you want to understand it better. So I bring the biblical understanding and knowledge that you may need to up your game to build your relationship with Christ for yourself. I want everybody to be able to have a relationship with God. And I believe that we've done a disservice because there's a lot of things in the Christian faith that people just do not know. It's like a lot of historical things that people do not know. And so when I started reading the Bible for myself, I was like, we don't do that. How come we don't do that? Or why are we doing this? Like, it's just things were not making sense. So I've gone through and I've like made things make sense and went ahead and spoke out about things that just don't make sense. For example, I go back to recently October. People have this Halloween thing that they do. That don't have nothing to do with God. God's not in that. So if your church is doing a trunk or treat, he not in trunk or treat. He not. He not in Santa Claus with you and your kids bringing Santa Claus to church to have a Saturday brunch with Santa. He's not in any of this. And so I just bring the biblical truth because it needs to be said and people need to understand that has nothing to do with your faith. So then why are we doing it is the question. Because we want to please man. And most of the time they're just trying to get, tithes and offering and things like that. And it just don't make sense because what we end up doing is putting our own faith in jeopardy. And we really lose faith with little things like that we might do. And I really want y'all to build faith. I really want us to win, and I want us to have a relationship. There is I have to really go and look at the story. There is a story in the New Testament where they say, oh well, Lord, we did these things for you. We baptized, we cast out demons, and we did this for the poor. We did this in your name. And he said, I don't know you. Get away from me. I want you to know him. I don't want you to get up to judgment day. And he say, I don't know you. That is the worst. Do you hear me? We can't be living out here and now it's in vain. So like we really need to learn and understand. So drop a heart or two if you want to get on the train where you want to learn and understand. And this is just, it's information that people should be just talking about and sharing about, because I think that it's important that you know that it's not okay to have trunk or treat. I think it's important that you know it's not okay to do Santa Claus, because these things actually go against God. And in order to sometimes understand those, and it's okay if you're not there yet, in order to understand, you have to have a deeper level, you have to have a deeper relationship. And I appreciate the fact that God was able to sit me down years ago so I can develop a deeper relationship. He was able to tell me no years ago with some things that I was wanting to do. And it was so I could have a deeper relationship. And I appreciate that. Do you know the doors in my life that have closed, that he has closed, are so much better than the ones that he has opened? I thank God. Sometimes I just think about stuff and I just thank God that he closed that door. Like, thank you for never allowing me to pledge. Like, these things would have sent me far away from you. Thank you for closing the door. And when you can get to that point where you can thank God and not be resentful for things that you just don't understand, give yourself some time to understand it. He will bring you understanding. And so tonight we are going to jump into the 12 Days of Christmas story. We are reading the Bible. Every year I make it a point to make sure I read the story of Jesus' birth. And so tonight we are diving into our last portion of the story of Jesus' birth, and we're getting into the wise men story. Okay, so yesterday, I believe we had literally just talked about the shepherds 2 nights ago. Yesterday we talked about after he was born, and Mary and Joseph went to the temple to give his to give the dedication, and they named him and they did the whole circumcision. I mean, well, that was before that, but we just talked about all those pieces in Luke. So tonight we are jumping into the wise men. This story is going to be coming from the gospel. I believe we're in Matthew 3. I want to say. I should have jotted that down. We should be in Matthew 3. And so, because last night we were in Luke 2, and the story of Jesus' birth is in like 2 different books. So you have to basically pair them side by side. I have my Bible over here, and the one that I use is the chronological NLT. So for anybody who wants a Bible reference, a Bible recommendation, I use the chronological NLT. I use the chronological because I love to read it in order. So for example, when I was doing my personal devotion today, I was reading about some stuff in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles, because it's the story of the kings of Judah. So I was reading about King Ahaz and stuff that happened with him, and he wasn't listening to God. But what it does is the parts that Isaiah was referring to King Ahaz when Isaiah wrote his book and he was prophesying against that king, or telling them about what God was saying. I get to read the story about King Ahaz, but then I get to read it from Isaiah. So it pulls it right in order. And so it does the same thing in the New Testament. It's pulling it in order. So it's almost like reading stories side by side. So I don't have to go to the book of Isaiah to find it, and then the book of 2 King and then 2 Chronicles, and put it together. It's all right there, and it all flows, and it's beautiful, and it makes the Bible make sense. I'm telling y'all, go get you the chronological NLT and start reading that thing. It will change your reading game in the Bible, in the Word. And it ain't like you got to read it in a year. We're not doing that. I have done that before, and that is a beautiful process. I do not recommend it because it's not for the faint of heart. Do not sit up here and try to read the Bible in a year. It is designed so that you can read the Bible in a year. Strong, do not recommend. Because if you are not developed and you don't have 45 minutes to an hour every day to devote, do not read the Bible in a year. However, it is great for the chronological aspect of it, and I love it. So when we get the story of Jesus, of his birth, it gives it to us in Luke and Matthew, like side by side. And so it's great. So we are starting in Matthew 3, and it's starting off with wise men from the east. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. Verse 5. So they said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Verse 7. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the young child. And when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also. All right. So he being a little sneaky. Let's go to verse 9. It says, when they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. All right, now I taught y'all the first 2 days of this series. We were talking about the Old Testament prophecies of how we know that they knew that Jesus was coming. Like we read it in Numbers, we read it in Isaiah and Jeremiah. It was in quite a few books in the Old Testament. Here in Psalm 72, we have it to where the Old Testament prophesies about the wise men coming. Now we're going to go back and read through and talk through, because we're going to read and we understand things in context when we read it from the Bible, okay, and everything. Psalm 72 verses 8 through 11. If you want to flip there, this is how we know they knew about like the wise men coming into this whole situation. It says in verse 8, he shall have dominion also from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. Those who dwell in the wilderness will bow before him, and his enemies will lick the dust. The kings of Tarshish and of the isles will bring presents. The kings of Sheba and Seba will offer gifts. Yes, all kings shall fall down before him. All nations shall serve him. All right. So that is referring to the general like direction and place that they would come from. Now, interesting enough, if you look it up, they're not really sure where Tarshish is. They also say that like Sheba and Seba could have been like Saudi Arabia area. So they're not really sure in what direction, but we know that it says that they will bring presents. They shall fall down before him, and nations shall serve him. So let's go back to the beginning to see how they did that, how they brought the gifts and how they served him. So in verse 1, we have now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. Things you need to know. Herod was the king. Herod is Jewish. If you come to Herod and say, where is he who was born King of the Jews? He's looking like, I ain't got no kids, or I don't have no babies. What you talking about, king? So he's already offended, because who is king and I'm king? Who's trying to become king? Is very common in these types of things where somebody could be assassinated very easily. Like you can have somebody coming up against you. So it's very common for somebody to be weary of somebody coming to assassinate them or plot to kill them. So it's no wonder why King Herod went to the lengths that he did to protect himself, because King Herod, though he was Jewish, he didn't understand the ways of the Jews. He knew that there were certain traditions that you did, certain feasts you did, but he did not understand the scriptures fully. And so somebody was not coming to replace him. Somebody was coming to be king of kings. He didn't get that. So that went right over his head. So but that's what happens when you don't read and study. So now this says after Jesus was born in Bethlehem. It tells us the time period. It does not, I repeat, it does not tell us the exact timing of this visitation. Now, in our lesson yesterday, we know the specific sort of days because it says circumcision on the 8th day. So we know that happened on the 8th day. He was circumcised. It says the time of purification. We know that in the Old Testament, the time of purification for Mary for a boy was like 33 days. So we know the timing in which they went to the temple. In this passage, I'm going to be clear, it does not tell us how long of time this took for the wise men. We do, however, know that it was not on that night. How do I know? Because when we read the shepherd story, it said on that night. It was very specific. It was the same time frame. This is not on that night. So when y'all do y'all plays, which your kids are beautiful, just be sure to insert a little clip that says this actually happened a little later than when Jesus was born. And we will know why more tomorrow. It's going to give us some more context in the text tomorrow. But this is not the same night as Jesus was born. But they came and they asked him. And we know they came from the east. They came to Jerusalem. They told the king, we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. That means that they were given a sign by the heavens above, the star, his star. Now, this is specific because, people don't really understand, but when we get stars, we get a star when we're born. Jesus' star shone in the east. Now, the wise men, I cannot remember, the magi is what it refers to, I believe, in like King James Version. Think of it like astrology, but a lot better because they understood the signs of the times. God gave us the sun, moon, and stars for signs and seasons. They understood that this star represented a significant sign, and they were able to read the stars in that way to know that the King of the Jews is born. Now, this sounds a lot foreign to us because we don't know how to read stars and read the signs, and that sounds a very new age. But I would love to assure you that this is not new age. This is very biblical. They understood the signs of the time, similar to, if you read in the Old Testament, the children of Issachar, who understood the signs of the times. That's why I love that name, Issachar. These wise men were not your modern day astrologists who are out here talking about the zodiac signs. Okay. These were more like astronomers who understood and studied the sky and knew the signs and seasons because God gave us the sun, moon, and stars for signs and seasons. All right. So they came to worship him. Now, there is also evidence in the Bible that there were more than just the people that were of Israel who would have known about God and worshiped God and understood the signs and things like that. Like, it wasn't just that group of people. They just so happened to be the called out ones, to where God gave them a specific land and gave them a specific person and said that the Savior of the world would come through them, but they were not the only ones who followed him. So this is not far-fetched that they would come and want to worship him. Verse 3 says, when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, here's why Herod was troubled. Herod thinks in his human mind that somebody is trying to come and take the throne from him. He does not understand that we talking about the King of Kings here. He thinks he's talking about on his level a king that's trying to come and grow up and take over his throne. Ain't nobody trying to take King Herod's throne. But because he's small-minded, he doesn't understand this. Now, they are troubled because the people in the East knew about Jesus, but they didn't know about Jesus. Like, it's a reason, though, why they didn't know about Jesus. And you're in Jerusalem, and you're supposed to be understanding the Bible, and you're supposed to be understanding the signs of the time. So why don't you know that Jesus was born? Why aren't you paying attention to the star? Why aren't you looking at the time? Because it's very clear if you read the different prophetic texts of when he would come. So why aren't you preparing? And they already came to the temple in Jerusalem. Why didn't you know about it? Because it wasn't meant for these small-minded people to know. but it was meant for signs because Jesus is for the nations. He is not just for those people in Israel. He would come through them, but he's not just for them. So you have to understand that the nations needed to know, because they have to come under submission to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So God did that intentionally. So they are troubled because they don't know, but other people know. It's kind of like, how something going down in your own household and you don't know about it, but people outside your household know about it. It's kind of like that situation. So he was troubled in all Jerusalem with him. So this is what they did. He gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together. Those are the people. Scribes are like lawyers in the Bible. So those are the ones who like literally write down like what's happening in their sort of like court system. And then you've got the chief priests. So these are people who are supposed to know this law inside and out. And he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. Christ is a Messiah. They said to him, in Bethlehem